Hi, welcome to Tiny Garage Fabrication. We're continuing on with our 1972 Chevy C10 shop truck build. This episode we're going to get the engine out, get everything put together between the engine and transmission, the flywheel, the pressure plate, the clutch, all that stuff. Jam it back in, hopefully for the last time. Start working on the fuel system, maybe a little bit of wiring, maybe a little bit of exhaust. We'll see what kind of time I end up with today. So, let's get to work. In the last episode, I test fitted the engine and transmission, as well as modified the crossmember to accept this 5-speed NV3500 manual transmission. Now I have to pull it out and separate the engine from trans so that I can install the flywheel and clutch that I just received from Summit Racing. And I've got some work to do on the transmission as well as the floor pan. And we'll get to that in a minute. Now here's the flywheel. This attaches to the end of the crank with 6 bolts. I got new bolts and washers. While I was ordering stuff, there was no reason to not spend another couple of dollars for it. Now dipping the threads in some oil and then working the flywheel onto the flange slowly and in a crisscross pattern. I get everything all seated and then go for my torque wrench. You can see I'm using a pry bar against one of the bell housing dowel pins in order to keep the flywheel from rotating as I torque it. I'm torquing it in 3 steps here. I don't remember the torque spec offhand, but I worked my way up to the final torque. Now installing the clutch and the pressure plate, make sure everything's clean, give it a wipe with brake clean, and then install it. And I'm using ARP bolts here for the pressure plate because I had them left over from the last time I had this engine in a different truck. Now very important here is the clutch alignment tool. You'll see me pulling on it occasionally. Right now it's kind of stuck, so I have to loosen up the pressure plate and realign the disc. And slowly as I go through a crisscross pattern, you'll see me keep pulling on that alignment pin to make sure that it goes smoothly in and out. If these things bind at any point in time, you're going to have a hell of a time getting the transmission installed. Now that we've got everything squared up and tightened up, we're going to go ahead and torque this to spec and give it one last fit with the alignment tool just to verify that nothing shifted. There we go, easy day. Now for the transmission, I'm going to go ahead and add the new throwout bearing that came with the clutch kit. I'm going to clean everything off, add some of this high temperature grease that came with the clutch kit. Now I also ordered a new clutch fork pivot ball, but I have to separate the transmission. It actually bolts in from the inside, which is a really weird design, so I was unable to put a new ball on it. I do have one, and down the road if I need to change it, then I'll pull this trans apart and swap that out. But I got a new clutch fork to go with the new bearing, and now it's time to put these things together. So this thing just slid right on. Either I got lucky or I did a really good job in installing the clutch. I'll let you decide which of those two happened. Here I'm taking a quick moment to swap out all of the bell housing bolts with the proper length, and they're also grade 8 fasteners. I had just some random junk laying around just for alignment and testing purposes. So we'll get all those installed, get them torqued to spec, and then let's get this engine in place. Oh, wait, not so fast. Last episode we left with me marking the underside of the transmission tunnel of where I need to cut a hole for the shifter. And from underneath the truck, I drilled out the 4 corner points where I thought it needed to land, and now I'll go ahead and cut that out. Let's lay the carpet down over it and use the hole underneath as kind of a guide to see where I have to cut the carpet, and we'll go ahead and trim it back from there. And now we can stuff this motor in for hopefully the last time. So while I was on the new parts ordering binge, I ordered new motor mounts, as the old ones, some of the thread holes in them were pretty bad. So we've got new hardware, new motor mounts, get this thing put in there. And installing something like this by yourself takes a fair amount of time, a lot of wiggling, a lot of up and down and up and down. You'll see me, from the top and the front and underneath and back to the top and back underneath. That's just kind of how it goes. A lot easier to do this with a buddy. I landed the shifter just about perfect. I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm gonna have to lower the trans so I can move this thing around. I actually probably gonna have to pull it out in order to even get the shifter bolted in there, but that's fine. So I've got the cross member moved back and I've got the shifter reinstalled. There's just the 4 bolts, and now I'm putting this big isolator back in place. I cut across one side so I can sneak it in around the shifter base. Now this thing will keep any heat from coming up through that hole in the floor, as well as hopefully deaden some sound and road noise. Now that it's in place, we'll jack up the transmission, shove that cross member back into the spot it needs to be in, attach all the hardware, lower the trans on the mount, get it bolted up, and trans install is complete. For what I have to do next, I can't have this thing on the jack stands or on those rolling cribs that I had before, so I'm going to go ahead and temporarily put these wheels back on the front and put it on some wheel dollies. This way I can still keep the truck a little bit off the ground and still move it around. Alright, so we're going to go over the fuel system a little bit here. This is the tank that I wanted to use. This is the tank that I ran in my 69 Suburban with an LS swap. I did that a while ago. So I fitted a fuel pump from a 2003 Silverado. This is what the LS was from, so I knew it would be a good match. And it's got -6 feed and return, and then all the other stuff is capped off. Now the reason I'm not using this right now is it's a side fill, and I don't have any way to get the gas in the truck if I install this. The plan is to do like a drop down tail light and a remote fill through there, but the hard facts are that I have to have this truck on the road in less than 2 weeks. I don't have time to fabricate all that, so I'm going to use the fuel tank that's already in the cab, and with some clever adapting, we'll be able to make that work. Let me show you. Here's all the stuff that I had bought for the remote fuel tank. I bought some really good high quality low permutation hose. This was not exactly cheap. This is -6 Fragola Easy Street low permeation fuel hose. And for that, you use these right here. It's just got a single barb on it, and then on the back side of it, you crimp it. Then on the back side of it, you crimp it with these ear type clamps, which require a special crimp tool, which I bought specifically for this job. But I'm not going that route right now. I have all the stuff because I will rig that tank. I will do the remote fuel fill. However, some of this stuff I can still use, because the cool thing is these are reusable. All you got to do is just, you have to destruct the hose and kind of get rid of the clamps, but these are pretty cheap. I also have a handful of the regular fuel injection style clamps, which I'll also going to use in the modifications with the factory fuel tank, and I'll show you where and how. Now I got a bag of AN stuff left over from when I did the fuel system on the Suburban with the LS1. For a while I ran this external pump. It's kind of loud. It's a Walbro 255 external. I ended up scrapping that. That's why I went with the other tank with the in-tank fuel pump. And it's going to use the Corvette style filter regulator. Now this has a inlet and a return. It automatically regulates at 58 psi. However, these fittings right here, these are not the ones you want. These little plastic clips can fail, and these things can pop off and then spray your vehicle down with fuel and start you on fire, and nobody likes that. So an updated version are these much superior ones that positively lock, so it screws together. So you put this on, get this in place, and then screws together. You tighten this, and it cannot it cannot come off. And there's an O-ring inside that fits it. So now I have a -6 for the return. I've got the one for the supply for the 3/8 line, and then I've already got a -6 on the outlet side. So this is the one which will have a single feed to my fuel injection, because I do have a deadhead style fuel injection, or returnless style. So my return will come right out of here, go straight back to the tank, and I'll use factory lines for that. The factory lines for return are 5/16, and there's some rubber and some steel. So the plan is to make sure that all the end piece of the steel have flares, and where the rubber goes, I'm going to change all the rubber to fuel injection hoses and then use these regular style clamps. Now, because it's a bypass, it won't technically build pressure, so all of that should be able to hold anything that goes back to it. Really, the only pressurized side is from out of the pump to the inlet, and then from the exit. The back side of the pump is also non-pressurized. So I'm going to go from the fuel tank, which has a 3/8 metal output, and this right here is a 3/8. This is the Flex Lock 250-pound fuel injection hose. So I'm going to slip this over the 3/8 barb. I'm going to clamp it. It'll go into this filter right here. This will be my pre-filter for the pump. And then I'm going to use a couple of pieces, just some bends that I had left over from a previous build. Hook that from the outlet of the filter to the inlet of the pump. And then I should be able to do another one of these from the outlet of the pump to the inlet of the filter regulator, right? And then I'm going to build hose from this right here, because I only need a little bit to adapt. So the rest of this will be built with the good fittings and the crimp locks, and this will go up to the fuel injection, which has a -6 inlet. So this right here will be my main fuel feed, and then for the return I'll need just a little bit of this to go from here, and then it'll go back to the hard line that's already installed for the return for the factory fuel tank. And this right here is how I'm going to do that. I'm not going to open this yet, but I'll open this one. This one I got off of Amazon. I don't think I'm going to use this one at all. It just doesn't, the quality doesn't appear to be the same, but it's the same type, so I'll show you what it does. So this will fit over the 5/16 metal tube. It has a compression fitting, and then this slides on, and essentially once you tighten this up, it'll squeeze fit onto the 5/16 line. That's 3/8, but it'll squeeze on the 5/16 and give you a -6 out. So I'll be able to go from -6 to -6 with just a small little jumper line right here. That's the plan. I'm going to do all of it underneath the vehicle, so I probably won't have much footage of it, but I will show it when I'm done. Here's the installation. This is the factory fuel return line. I cut a bit off of it, just had a little spot where it mounted to the frame. I cut that off with a cutoff wheel, and then I hit this with a flap disc and then some sandpaper to clean everything up real nice. Now all we got to do is slide this on first, then slide the little brass ferrule on there. Add a drop of oil to the threads. Push this in until it bottoms out. There we go. It's pretty tight. Now, give it a tug. That's going nowhere. So we now have an AN line where we once had just a regular line. No flaring involved, none of that stuff. Cool. Now here's how we install those barbed fittings into the fuel injection hose. A little bit of oil on the fitting, and then you just got to kind of ram jam this thing in there. Make sure you put the crimp connector on first, or that you have access to slide it on from the back side if you forget. Now this tool also has like a side one, so if you have like low profile, you can get in there and do it from the side too. So pay a little extra for these, but I think that simple utility of a tight space is worth it. Now that I got one end on, I'm going to attach this to the filter regulator, and I'm going to measure how far back I need to cut. I'm going to make a short hose to go to the return line that I just made. Then I'm going to do this again. Actually, I'll just start at the other end. We'll make the other one right now. Now here's hopefully a little bit better look at how to do that again. Like I said, a little bit of oil on the fitting, a little bit of oil in the tube if you can, and then you just kind of get it in there and you push, 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 and it will go. It's difficult, but it goes. And then using the pliers, you just line it up and squeeze down until it stops, and you've got a perfect crimp fit. Let me try to give you a good tour of the fuel system here. So this is the supply line, the 3/8 line. It goes to the soft hose with the fuel injection clamp into a fuel filter. I believe this is a 100 micron. It's a pre-filter for the fuel pump, which you can see right there. Well, right there is the fuel pump. Let's squeeze to the other side of the cross member. Alright, so here we go. So here's the fuel pump, and it rolls into the filter regulator, and then it comes out right here, runs back to the factory return line. This is the one that we put that compression to AN fitting on, and it runs back this way to here. Now I still need to fix this, or get new hoses here, new hoses and clamps where it goes up into the cab, and then there's a couple more soft lines in the cab that I'm going to replace, and I'm going to do all that stuff off camera. Lastly, I just need to get, I want to get an adapter fitting for this, probably like a not quite a 90, maybe a 90 is what I need, because I know the exhaust is going to kind of be in this space. I don't want this hose to be too close to the exhaust, but I also want to run it up the back of the firewall to the throttle body. Last night after I got home from installing the fuel system, I made this. This is a little bracket for the fuel pump itself. So I got padding on this side against the frame. There's a threaded hole right there, and then little pass-throughs for zip ties to lay in. And basically we're just gonna, zip tie the fuel pump to this, bolt it to the frame with one bolt, and hopefully that'll keep it from wiggling around and weakening that aluminum line between the filter and the pump. There it is installed. I got a little bit of padding on the back side, hopefully for some sound isolation, and then it's pretty well secured to there with one bolt through the frame. But it's pretty solid. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. That does it for this episode. I didn't get to the exhaust, but I'm not terribly concerned about that. The fuel system was a little more time consuming than I wanted, but that's one of those things that you need to make sure is like mint. You can't just wing it with the fuel system, because start leaking gas near the exhaust, start a fire, you die, truck burns, whatever. Nobody likes that. Next up though, I am going to work on the exhaust, try to get that fitted, because that's one more piece that I have to get before I can really get into the wiring and things like that. So I've got exhaust, I've got wiring, and with wiring we'll be fitting the fuel injection system as well as the timing. And then after all that, we'll just kind of start putting stuff back together. I've reached the point that I'm out of time, so a lot of the scrubbing and repainting of things is just not going to happen. I wasted too much time already on that, because once again, this is the shop truck, not a show truck. I need to keep reminding myself of that and actually sticking to it. With all that said, make sure to hit the subscribe button, make sure to ring the bell for notifications when I upload new videos on this project, as well as some upcoming projects. I've got some really cool ones. Trust me, you're going to like them. Smash the like button, leave a comment, stick around. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.